Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another session of Discovery. We're very pleased to have you here. So my name is Alison Moskowitz. I am the Director of Engagement at Efficiency Canada, and I am joining you from Calgary, Alberta, which is home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. While we are a remote workplace, Efficiency Canada is based at Carleton University in Ottawa, which is located in the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation. So let me introduce our guests today. Today we have Mark Czapewski, Vice President of Program Development for Electricity Human Resources Canada. And we also have Joanna Turnen, who is the Project Manager for the Empowering Futures program. So they are going to talk to us today a little bit about the research they do on labor supply and demand gap, some of the challenges the industry faces, which I'm sure some of you are probably living right now, and then some of the opportunities presented in the form of investments and financial support for employers. So with that, over to you.
Thank you, Allison. And of course, thank you so much to Efficiency Canada for having us here today. For those of you who don't know who we are, we're the organization, EHRC is the organization dedicated to ensuring Canada has the workforce to keep the lights and other essential services running in Canada, a workforce that is safety focused, highly skilled, diverse, and productive. And we do that in a variety of ways. And I like to think we do two things particularly well. The first is labor market intelligence. We do the deep dive research to understand who's doing what and with what skills in what occupations in Canada to ensure we can maintain 24/7, 365 power flow. And do we have enough of those people? And if we don't, what do we do about it? And which stakeholders do we need at the table to help solve the big issues? We then take our research and turn it into actionable programs, and including labor market interventions. So examples might include attracting more youth to the industry, diversifying the industry, building out HR best practices, and management best practices. Our members and partners are companies, unions, educational institutions, governments, and policymakers at the federal, provincial, and municipal level. And knowing all that, today I'm going to speak to what I consider our most important asset in the Canadian electricity industry and renewable energy industry, our people. So the Canadian energy industry is in a state of flux, and today's electricity landscape looks very different than it did even a decade ago. Our energy policies are increasingly greener. We've got new technologies that are changing the grid, and the workforce isn't getting any younger. These were major trends that we actually had heading into the pandemic, and they've continued and in fact accelerated post-pandemic, or I know we're not supposed to say post-pandemic, but as we emerge in this new world, we are. The electricity industry has been incredibly resilient over the past almost 3 years, and keeping employees safe across the country was paramount. It also allowed us to keep our hospitals, grocery stores, and homes powered up over the course of that time period. However, the key drivers have continued, and in fact, in some cases accelerated. So technology adoption, policy shifting towards more and greener alternative energy sources, and of course, the demographic change, specifically retirements in the industry. So innovation in technology and business process is really what's reshaping how we generate, deliver, and use electricity, thinking specifically of artificial intelligence, smart grids, increasingly electrification as we transition from one form of energy for transportation, for example, or building, heating, and cooling, and what that does for the grid. And also one of the things that keeps a lot of our CEOs up at night, cybersecurity. And while that innovation will bring with it tremendous opportunities in efficiency, pricing, quality, and indeed consumer choice, it also brings issues and challenges around upskilling, developing the workforce that can continuously adapt and innovate within a rapidly changing environment as a result of technology and policy. The skilled and trained workforce is an essential component to decarbonization. And while we still need to manage our legacy systems, so giant hydroelectric infrastructure, nuclear power plants, and other big infrastructure projects, we're going to see new types of work and jobs evolve as a result of energy policy and tech advancements. One example here, of course, would be the growth in the number of electric vehicles on the roads. That's going to necessitate substantial modification and upgrades to the existing grid infrastructure to handle the load increase. When we move to buildings, that's energy efficiency, refits, or new builds, there will be new jobs created all along the manufacturing and natural resources supply chains. In this industry, the electricity industry, just over 80% of the workforce requires highly technical skills to work in the sector. So skilled tradespeople, engineers, technicians, technologists, in order to achieve a successful energy transition. We need to think about renewable energy and storage technologies that work in a Canadian climate. We need to think about small modular reactors. I've heard many people refer to the growth in city demand requiring an all hands on deck approach. So it's not a nuclear versus renewables versus other traditional forms of electricity. It's pretty much everything. And it will be different depending on the provincial jurisdiction based on the natural resources and other elements available in that jurisdiction. Each of the proposed solutions, though, has unique skills and competency challenges associated with them. Many of them will require more trades folks. Many of these roles have long lead times to full competency. We mentioned over 80% of the industry is highly skilled. To the in Canada depends on these essential workers 24/7, 365, but it's not a just-in-time industry. It could be 5 to 10 years to full competence in some roles, in many roles, in fact. And we need to be able to plan well in advance for labor market need. So if we're thinking 5 years to grow a specific worker or a specific workforce, we need to really start planning now. If anything, we should have started planning a few years ago. So if we think about that, 5 years, that's when we start to have enough people in a given role, assuming we've got the training programs in place. If we're thinking nuclear, that could be as many as 10 years. There's another area of workforce need that warrants discussion too, and that's climate change. It's having an impact in our industry, particularly in two ways. So the first is the increase in adverse weather events, the response that's required. We see incredible coordination across borders, both provincial and international. And when we need to respond to some of the major storms we have seen just recently, so examples being in Ottawa, the derecho that hit the city and literally took out 40% of the grid in a very, very short period of time, or Light in BC, where we had the fires that were as a result of unprecedented heat. The second is our societal push and subsequent public policy moving us towards a zero or low carbon economy. Electrification is, of course, going to be a big part of the energy transition and energy usage. And in order for that to happen successfully, the grid and the sector is going to have to go on a bit of a hiring spree. Current grid infrastructure was not designed or built to handle the significantly increased load or demand for electricity. Some studies have put Canada's electrification requirements at 2 to 3 times current generation need, and I've seen at least one now that's projecting 4 times by 2050. We don't quite have a handle on what this workforce of the future is going to look like, but we do certainly know that it's going to be bigger than our steady state 100,000 plus workers that's kept the grid alive since 2005 when we first started properly looking at these numbers. It's also worth discussing demographics. We're already seeing an extremely tight labor market. We knew this was coming because of Canadian demographics. We finally hit the baby boomer cliff. So retirements coupled with a slower reproduction rate mean we have a shrinking pool of youth talent to draw from. The pandemic had an interesting effect on retirements, not just in our industry, but across industries. At first, retirements kind of stalled for a couple of years, but then last year it accelerated, and it accelerated hard. This aligns with our anecdotal evidence from employers. I was speaking to a local distribution utility recently, and the HR director said to me, and it was almost a direct quote, "We should all be checking on our neighbors because I don't know where all the applicants went." So he's of the belief that people have just disappeared. They vanished from the labor market. And that is bearing out from evidence we're hearing from companies across the board. Statistics Canada also shows that Canada's working age population is older than it has ever been. By October of last year, 300,000 people had retired. And in the entire previous year, that number was only 220,000. 86% of our turnover in this industry is driven by retirement. And our retirement rate in the industry is 1.5 times the national average. Now, this is at a time when we also want to grow new generation, transmission, and distribution at a rate we haven't attempted since 1981. The labor market is tighter than it's been since the 70s across Canada. For a year, job vacancies nationwide have hit 1 million consistently month over month across industries. And the labor market participation rate in Canada right now is at its highest point in recent history. At the same time, training needs are evolving. Employers are looking to upskill or reskill their teams as legacy infrastructure is replaced, and their expectations of employees who are job ready are likely to have to change as well, as many employers find they cannot find the workers with the level of experience or tenure that they would traditionally have looked for when they hire. What this means is that a number or a lot of valuable institutional knowledge will be walking out the doors very soon or already has. And succession planning is a critical component of managing this for any organization's resiliency going forward. Worryingly, many employers in the industry don't have a good knowledge management process to ensure that experience is captured and passed on to the next generation of workers. On top of that, youth representation in the industry remains chronically low. Only 5% of the total labor force is under 25 compared to an average of 10.6% in all other industries in Canada. Many young people aren't aware of the full benefits the sector offers and don't fully understand the breadth of careers that are available. While they very much support big changes that are going to address climate change or a zero carbon future, electric cars, renewable energy technology, and so on, the challenge is that they don't connect these big vision actions with actual work in the electricity industry and all the jobs that actually exist outside of the iconic power line technician or electrical engineer. Only 26% of our workers are women in the trades. That drops to single digits. The proportion of Indigenous people working in the sector is 4.7%, with a high concentration in the trades. However, even here we can do better in this industry because electricity jobs are everywhere. They're as much rural as they are urban, and as we look at getting off diesel in rural and remote communities, we have to engage more Indigenous people. Immigration is another factor that's absolutely necessary to meet our employment needs, and as Canada commits to 1.5 million people over 3 years immigrating to Canada, that is an area of labor market need that we need to tap into. the labor market supply that we need to tap into and do a better job of it. On the subject of diversity, EHRC has long promoted the value of DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, better integration of women, Indigenous people, Black and racialized Canadians, people with disabilities, internationally trained workers, and others presents an opportunity to improve innovation, reduce inefficiency, and ensure the reliability and safety of the grid through our energy transition. Developing a culture of inclusion takes commitment and intention, and it has to be genuine. We have a shared responsibility to make that change happen. EHRC launched the Leadership Accord on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion as a commitment and has now been signed by over 100 signatories and advocates to date, which includes benchmarking and follow-on reporting to demonstrate incremental improvement. We've seen great results from that program so far, and our hope is more signatories with more time and more people committing to better over that time. I think it's also worth talking a little bit about a project that we also took on a couple of years ago. We started a journey to map out every task, skill, competency, and occupation in the industry that is required to keep the lights on. We now have mapped a competency framework that allows us to see with a high degree of clarity which competencies are required for the sector across occupations and employer types. With this framework, EHRC is able to take a deep dive into different roles to see which roles share competencies with other roles. This allows for efficiencies of training and upskilling. It allows for broader workforce planning to transition staff from one role to another in the event one role is disappearing. I'm thinking meter readers, for example, or thermal coal workers. The common language also allows for better informed pay equity discussions across roles. Our labor friends really like that aspect of it. It informs training and curriculum development plans and even custom job descriptions, picking and choosing from one competency stack to another to marry job descriptions together. One of the interesting side benefits of this research was that we started to explore some experimental occupations. So things like several years ago, as we were starting the research, there was a lot of buzz around energy storage technicians and smart grid specialists and even EV charging station installers, which today sounds a little bit silly that we would even have second thoughts about those occupations. But at the time, they weren't really roles. They were performed by technicians, technologists, electricians, just off the side of the proverbial desk, so to speak. But as we've dug deeper and as time passed, those were and are emerging roles. We're seeing them performed increasingly today, but the current education system isn't tooled currently to keep up with this emerging labor market demand for these roles. And we're hoping that over time, as a result of this particular work, we'll start to see a bit of a better standardization of training across Canada, and we are working on an initiative that I'll talk shortly about as well related to that. On that note, we're rolling out our new labor market intelligence. This time, we're building our own economic model with in-house and contracted economist experts so that we can start to do more real-time data analysis and projections as policy and technology change over time, and that responds to the unique circumstances of each Canadian region as electricity is provincially and territorially regulated. We're also developing a micro-accreditation program. The goal here is not to replace the trades, technician, technologists, or engineering certifications, but instead to focus on those roles that I just mentioned that have emerged so quickly. Grounded in our competency framework and national occupational standards, we can accredit training programs, educational institutions looking to train solar installers, wind turbine techs, wind blade techs, EV charging station installers, and a few others. And this will allow us to standardize the training across Canada, as right now there is no training standard nationwide for any of the roles. So why is this important? I thought I'd share with you a little anecdote about a friend of mine who traveled up to northern Quebec. He had spoken to a mayor there. Mayor was super proud. He was the most northern municipality in Quebec that had an EV charging station installed on site. So my friend drove up from Montreal, parked his car in the parking lot of the town hall, and as he went to plug the car in, he realized that he couldn't actually see the meter on the charging station because it had been installed 180 degrees backwards against the wall. So when I talk about standardization of training across Canada, that's what I'm referring to. That's a really lighthearted example. There are potential concerns of individuals performing electrical work without the proper safety and health and safety training in order to do so. It's definitely a work in progress, but our hope is that over the coming years, we'll be able to help solve that problem too. Lastly, we'll be able to support employers in hiring workers from other sectors looking to transition for the first time to help respond to a significant labor market need. I mentioned earlier that we have a youth engagement challenge in this industry. So EHRC has partnered with Canadian Geographic to engage with youth in middle school because that's where they start to lose interest in math and science. And they need those math and science high school credits right up to grade 12 in order to enter over 80% of the occupations in this industry. So it doesn't matter whether it's engineering, technicians and technologists, or our skilled trades roles, you need your grade 12 math and science to enter any of those. By engaging youth while they are still in school, we can engage the next diverse generation of talent. Our hope is that we'll be able to encourage youth throughout the K-12 system to think about decarbonization explore how they can play a role in leading Canada to a greener future. These giant maps that we're developing in partnership with Canadian Geographic Education, and when I say giant, they are 11 by 8 meters in area, and they do roll out across the floor of a gymnasium in a middle school. And our hope will be that we can focus on highlighting the electricity industry in Canada, the energy efficiency that we're going to have to factor in, and our role and their role in helping Canada get to a zero or at least reduced carbon future. These are fundamental not only in a classroom setting to get young people thinking about environmental issues, and the electricity sector and energy efficiency as being key to addressing these issues, but they'll be more broadly, the creation of the maps will also appeal to the general public by fostering national dialogue on the economic future of our country. These maps, along with poster maps and Canadian Geographic in education in the classroom materials, will have map legends, activity cards, props, teachers' guides with curriculum-linked activities to help bring this map to life. And embedded on the map will be QR codes that will unveil amazing sensory experiences, including career profile videos of people actually working in the electricity industry and energy efficiency space, highlighting these roles and highlighting how individuals can come to work just like these people are today. The maps and their associated digital and print resources will be distributed to over 20,000 teachers and schools across Canada over the next 3 years. And one of the things that has consistently come out of our research is that Canada has been seeing registrations of youth in the skilled trades decline. And I think that's worth mentioning because that's a challenge. We have a lot of building to do till 2050 in order to meet our energy efficiency and electricity commitments, and tradespeople, skilled tradespeople will be required to do that. And over the course of the pandemic, we've actually seen trades or apprenticeship registrations decline. We've seen completions decline, and that's a challenge. And EHRC is working elsewhere on that too. And so I'd like to actually hand the floor over to my colleague, Joanna Turnen, project manager of our Empowering Futures program, to take us through the next little bit.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Allison, for the opportunity to be here today. Mark spoke earlier about the rate of retirement and the time it takes for someone in the industry to achieve full competence. But aside from that, we also know that the industry relies heavily on contractors for routine jobs, and recruitment is oftentimes done from within the sector. So all of these factors combined present a big challenge in replacing the existing workforce, but also preparing for that growth that we were talking about earlier in the sector. At the same time, though, our sector is generating a lot of opportunities for rewarding an in-demand career in renewable energy, in clean technologies, that a lot of young employees are attracted to. They want to work in professions for a healthier planet. So this presents a huge opportunity for us to attract youth in the industry and build their talent pool. So I want to tell you a bit about one of our EHRC's programs, Empowering Futures, whose aim is exactly that, to strengthen the industry's workforce. We'll go over the general program overview, some of the eligibility requirements, and information on how to apply. The Empowering Futures program is Canada's student and apprentice work placement program for the electricity industry. And the program's main goal is exactly that, to address the skill gaps and help the industry create and sustain a skilled and diverse labor force. So to do that, Empowering Futures and EHRC provide financial incentives and additional supports to employers who create work-integrated learning opportunities for students and for first-year apprentices in select red seal trades. So you'll see that the program provides wage subsidies and support both for students and for first-year apprentices. But today I'd like to focus on the apprenticeship stream. With Empowering Futures, eligible employers can receive a financial incentive of $5,000 for hiring a new first-year apprentice, an additional $5,000 if the apprentice actually self-identifies as belonging into one of the equity deserving groups. So that's a total of $10,000 per apprentice. The equity deserving groups, as defined by this program and our funder, are women, newcomers to Canada. So that's anyone that has arrived in Canada within the last 10 years. We also have persons with disabilities, Indigenous people, those who identify as a member of a visible minority group, or as a member of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. In order for employers to be eligible for funding, they have to be a Canadian-owned small or medium enterprise. And that means to have 499 employees or less. And we're not counting contractors, just full and part-time employees. The primary activity of the organization has to be either the generation, transmission, or distribution of electricity, but we're also able to provide funding to organizations that provide sector support, including renewables, in any of the areas such as R&D, business development, and energy efficiency. Lastly, the firms that are engaged in manufacturing of equipment or the provision of services also are eligible. On the candidate side, there are three very simple eligibility requirements. They have to be a first-year apprentice in one of the 39 construction and manufacturing Red Seal trades, and I'll give you a glimpse of that in a moment. They have to be a citizen, permanent resident, or a person with refugee protection in Canada. And they also have to be legally able to work in the country. So here's the list of the eligible trades. So these are also available on our website in case you need to consult them later, but you'll see we have welders, insulators, power line technician, construction electrician, industrial electrician, millwrights. So you are definitely more than welcome to visit our website for additional information if you're not sure if the trade you're looking to hire is covered by this. Some of our other considerations: each small or medium enterprise can hire a maximum of 2 new apprentices per fiscal year, and that's defined as April 1st to March 31st. So really, if you are looking to hire someone in the next couple of months, you're eligible to hire 2 more people right after April 1st. We're not able to fund retroactive applications, unfortunately, but if you had a pre-apprentice or someone working as a contractor who then starts an apprenticeship, then they would be eligible. And lastly, I just want to let you know about some of the additional supports that we provide. Our professional skills development program, which is a training launched by EHRC to support participants in the development of skills such as leadership, problem solving, communication, really skills that are essential to career evolution and growth in any career. We distribute this program free of charge to all of our participants. And we also encourage them to use our mentorship platform, Mentor Junction. Lastly, for the employers, we are developing a diversity, equity, and inclusion training to hire and retain those participants. And we also encourage us to use our job board to post their opportunities there. To apply for the funding, we have developed our own platform, Funding for Futures, which is a one-stop shop where you can manage your applications from the moment you submit it to all the way through the claim processing and payment stages all the way to completion. And again, you can access that at ehrcfundingforfutures.ca or through our main website, ehrc.ca. And Mark, back to you for closing.
You threw me there. So I'll just reemphasize. So we need to develop a critical supply of talent that's adaptable, and we need to do it essentially now. Transition to clean energy must be built upon inclusive policies that strengthen and support skilled and diverse workforce. It's going to lead to better collaboration across all of us to get there. We need to continue to be leaders in such things as electrification, developing policy that supports labor mobility and credential recognition, and supporting the world-class workforce that we know Canada has come to rely on. So in closing, again, thank you to Efficiency Canada for having us here today. Please go ahead and contact us if you think of something after today's discussion that we didn't discuss or that you'd like to ask a question about. Over to you, Allison.
Seamless transition, Mark. Thank you both so much. I'm blown away, I think, by the enormity of the challenge, but also the work that's being done to solve this. So there are a couple questions in the chat right now, but I thought maybe we could start with a few questions that are maybe a little bit more existential. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. We know that this is a huge challenge, and we know that this goes beyond the electricity industry as well. We're seeing trades like heating, ventilation, insulation, lots of trades to do with efficiency having the same problem. So how are you managing that competition right now? Is that part of the conversation that you're having with your stakeholders?
Competition is one of the biggest things in the labor market right now. Right. And inside of this industry, one of the interesting things we didn't talk about, but inside of this industry, one of the worst things that they do is they essentially poach from each other. That's the most likely talent pool to draw from because they have the most skills. They have the most tenure. They've demonstrated it within the electricity industry in this role. That has proven a challenge. And I think that's a particular challenge today because instead of just an industry that's steady state, we're growing. And so as soon as you start to grow anything, you need to start thinking about new ways of doing things. And I think one of the things I think labor market work right now is particularly interesting is because of this. Employers are starting to innovate. They're looking to access labor and talent from areas that they've never previously looked before because they didn't have to. They had enough people coming up with the right skills, the right competency mix, and that's just not the case anymore. I wasn't kidding about earlier when I said that there was a company that was like, go check your neighbors. I don't know where everybody is. Companies are now having to work with their college partners, with their polytechnic partners, with their university partners to come up with programs that respond to their labor market needs because there just aren't enough people. And that's layered on an issue that's been simmering under the surface for a long time. So the innovation is the name of the game, for it to borrow a catchphrase, but we have to look more innovatively at how we draw people into roles. I also think on the trade side, like the skilled trade side, one of our biggest challenges as a nation is that we view the skilled trades as lesser than. And the truth of the matter is we call them skilled trades for a reason. They are skilled. They are working with technologies that we simply didn't have 40 years ago. There's a reason they have to have their grade 12 math and science in order to enter these programs, because they're doing mathematical calculations on the fly. They have to understand the science of insulation, for example, finding the R factor and what is up to code. Like all of these things they're higher cognition skill sets that we need. And I think and it is a very Canadian problem, by the way. It's very Canadian, a very US problem. In Europe, they don't have the same issue with regard to viewing trades as lesser than. And it boils down to, even when we do surveys, and I say the collective we as a society, what's your highest level of education? It's not actually a higher level, because again, you're tiering the trades as lesser than, because you'll start off with, you have a doctorate, and then you have a graduate degree, and then you have an undergraduate, et cetera. So I think it goes back to our elementary, middle school, and high school system. And it's not just the teachers, it's not just the guidance counselors, it's the parents, right across the board. We need to encourage more people to enter the skilled trades. And I don't know if anybody's had work on their house done recently, but it costs a lot more than it used to. And part of the reason, and even if you can get a tradesperson to pick up the phone, because they are so slammed for business. Yeah. It's a big issue. Competition, as you say, Allison, is a big issue. We need to encourage more people, regardless of the trade, to go into the trades and to do it from an earlier age. Because one of the other things that, if you start to dig into labor market economics, one of the other interesting things is sometimes people will go into university, they'll do a degree, and then they'll be like, oh, there's no labor market demand for this particular degree or diploma, and then they end up in trade school anyway. What if we could short circuit that? Not to suggest that a university degree is not necessarily. I absolutely think that liberal arts, I'm a liberal arts graduate myself, and social sciences are critical and will also be critical to the energy transition, because we need people to sell the big ideas, to push the agenda, to change policy. Like, those are all critical as well. But I also think that some people would be better suited in the trades. And the other thing too is, tradespeople make a lot of money. If we're honest with ourselves, like, they do very well. If somebody had explained to me back when I was in high school that as an entry-level power line technician, for example, you can start out as an apprentice in the like $80,000 a year as an apprentice. So you're still training basically. So no loans, no student debt, and you're making money right off the block. And then by the time you're a journey person, that you could be into the 110, 115, 120,000 a year. Some people might have made different life decisions, but that message is not making it into the education system. So I know that was a really long-winded response to your question, but I think it's an all hands on deck approach, and we all need to do our part, basically.
Yeah, that sort of leads into the next couple questions. So I'm curious to know, when you're talking about the industry and poaching competition, how aligned are they? Because I know you work with a lot of distribution utilities, and I know you've got a big group of stakeholders. How aligned are they on working together to solve some of these issues? So because labor market is the language that everybody's speaking right now, so if you talk to a CEO, what keeps you up at night, regardless of the company, it could be like a Bruce Power or a Hydro One or a Hydro Ottawa or an ATCO or whatever. Everybody is saying labor market. And when everybody starts to say labor market, they all start to say, okay, if that's an issue for me and it's an issue for you, then like the poaching has to stop. Or at least we need to come up with a bigger plan together that solves the problem in the long term, because this interim sort of solutions that we're coming up with isn't working. I'm hearing a lot more about how to work together to solve it than I would have even 5 years ago. And everybody seems to be singing from the same songbook. And now it's just a matter of getting everybody to row in the same sort of policy direction. So just because of the sheer magnitude of the problem, I think more people are willing to work together to help solve it. And this industry does have a history of doing that. If you think about natural disaster response, and I'm specifically returning power to
households that have lost it. We've all seen the Hydro-Quebec trucks in Ontario come across the border, even the trucks from New York or Maine to support in the event of an ice storm recovery. And there's a long history of collaboration in this industry across international and provincial jurisdictions. And so that's starting to bleed up from the front line into other areas of the companies. That's what we're starting to see anyway.
And so from the policy perspective, what policies are in place right now that are supporting this labor market issue for the electricity industry or even the energy efficiency industry? And then what would you like to see?
I think credit to certainly the federal government, where credit is due. I think there's been a lot of effort and funding put into solving some of these problems. Like some of the things that EHRC is working on right now is a direct result of federal policy. So the program that Ioana was mentioning, it's a bit of a pilot essentially that the government's running. Like they know they have an apprenticeship registration and completion problem. They're hoping that this at least helps to solve the front end of it, the registration, by creating more labor market demand. And so that helps to solve that piece of it. And then they know that we have a growth problem and a retirement problem. So how do we get more people in? You can't be losing people and at the same time need more people and not have a longer term solution to that. One of the benefits of better labor market intelligence, something that we're also working on with federal funds, is that we can help to solve some of those problems too. The fact that they're working to strengthen the education system, to respond to new roles, that's all of these are good. It's just that it's like the Titanic. We need to turn the ship and it just takes time. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. So the hope would be that we get there. And I tend to be optimistic. I think we will. I think a lot of people are pulling in the right direction. And I also think that regardless of the government of the day, and I'm not going to name names by any stretch of the imagination, the economy has already started to shift. Car manufacturers now are increasingly saying by 2027, 2028, 2029, we will no longer be manufacturing internal combustion engines. That means regardless of public policy, like federal policy, people are going to be buying EVs, and so because there's no other option. And yes, there'll be a used car market for a while, but there will also be more and more EVs on the road, and that is going to increase demand for electricity as well. How do we manage that? Again, the pendulum swinging. Interestingly, side note, Alberta, I went to tender not that long ago on new generation. And one of the cool things about Alberta is they just ask for the lowest bidder. And so the lowest bidder now for new generation is wind and solar. Every time. The gas can't compete and the other options just can't compete with wind and solar. It's just cheaper to do. It's faster to get through regulatory stuff, and wind and solar wins every time, or at least currently in Alberta. And I see that trend moving anyway. Like again, internationally, wind and solar, it just increasingly keeps winning the big contracts, assuming there hasn't been a stipulation for one generation type over another.
That is one of the only things we have going for us in Alberta when it comes to energy efficiency and renewables. I say that in jest, being from Alberta.
It's moving in the right direction, though. I have to tell you, I know that maybe some of the political personalities aren't mentioning it, but there's a lot of work being done in the space behind the scenes.
Okay, so I'm just going to go to the question box, and I wanted to ask a question about stakeholders anyways. Can you talk a little bit about funding for affiliates? Do you fund affiliates that can help you provide candidates for the program, or do you have relationships with organizations that help to provide candidates? Talk a little bit about your stakeholders.
With regard to partners, so EHRC is a member-based organization. So our members currently are the companies, the unions, and the post-secondary education institutions in Canada that sort of make up this space. It does make us unique. Not a lot of associations have all of those three stakeholder groups at the table. And we also have stakeholders from government at the table as well. So policymakers, mostly at the federal level. Partners, industry associations. So think like the Electricity Canada, the Canadian Renewable Energy Association, Efficiency Canada, and others like them. We work very closely with them to help get the word out about the work that we're doing. And of course, as far as funding goes, most of our programs from a funding perspective are employment specific. Employers would come to us with I've got 3 candidates that I want to hire in this role. Do you have funding available? And then we determine, using our platform that we've developed, which program best aligns with what they're trying to do. So is it a newcomer to Canada? They'd go to Welcoming Newcomers. Is it a first-year apprentice? They go to Empowering Futures. Is it a worker who has no previous experience working in the electricity industry? We can help you too, using our Workers in Transition programs. All of those are funding opportunities that employers mostly would be able to access in order to bring new talent into their companies. Hopefully that helps to answer the question. So just to reiterate, so the funding for affiliates like our Ontario Sustainable Energy Association that can help provide. Yeah, again, we're more on a funding per employee model than we would be for an affiliate model, I would say. But I would be happy to have a conversation with somebody from Ontario Sustainable Energy Association if that's of interest.
Great. And if think we've got time for one more question. There's a lot of interest in the game that you were talking about, and people are wondering, is it available elsewhere for groups that might not be schools? I think it's the map that you were talking about.
Yes. So, so the MAPS project, I have to tell you, of all the projects that we're doing right now, and I'm not supposed to say that I have a favorite, but I do have a favorite. And it's just because it's so cool. We're literally right now going out across Canada and collecting video stories from Canadians working in real jobs, whether it's energy efficiency or electricity or renewable energy or whatever. There's some very cool stuff happening in Canada right now. We've got 75 of those that we're shooting over the course of the next 3 months. And what we're doing is using those videos on the map. So as you walk across the map, there's a QR code trigger, and you can see whoever it is, whether it's Joe, the solar panel installer in Northern Alberta, or the hydro engineer in Northern Quebec, or whatever it happens to be, talk about their role, what they do, and their contribution to getting Canada to a zero carbon future, which I think is super cool. And then on top of that, there's all the resources that come with kits, curriculum guides, like all those sorts of things that teachers benefit from. And we've linked them to curriculum in the provinces. So we all know that provinces have an energy, most of them have an energy curriculum as an element of their teaching. Increasingly now, and in Ontario included, there's an occupation specific element to the curriculum that they have to teach on. So this hits that as well. Our goal, of course, is that sort of grade 6 to grade 8, because we want to keep them in STEM for as long as possible and to engage them in why they stick to STEM. But really, these maps can be used much bigger than that. And we had originally planned to print 5. We're actually going to print a 6th, and that's going to be used for us with partners to do things like event and that sort of thing to engage more broadly on the discussion of getting Canada to net zero. So I think that's the part that answers the question.
Okay, so it sounds like if you're interested in this game, then you need to become a partner of EHRC.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. I learned an immense amount about the electricity industry, how you guys are helping. Just really warms my heart to see all this work happening. So we will be back next week. Our session next week is Chris Higgins. He is joining us from the city of Vancouver, and he'll actually be talking about how they implemented the first green building standards in Canada. So that'll be an amazing session, and you don't want to miss that. Thanks again, Mark and Ioana.
Thanks so much for having us, and thanks to Efficiency Canada for hosting.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.